This video series has been filmed at Parker Hannifin Manufacturing in Barnstaple in the UK. This is a manufacturing site certified to IATF 16949. The scope includes the design and manufacture of valves, manifolds, connectors, regulators, and supporting ancillary equipment in corrosion-resistant materials for automotive and non-automotive applications. This series simulates several scenarios in an IATF 16949 audit. Watch this video and see if the auditor is undertaking an effective audit. David, I'm following an audit trail. I was auditing procurement earlier, and I see that you procured this part from a new supplier.
Sure.
So what I'm looking for is take me through the qualification process for this part.
Okay, so this is the second inspection we've got on this part supplied into us. So we've done an initial inspection on the part. This is the second inspection. So we're just checking the part to the drawing, which we've got up here. Mainly the SC dimensions, but we tried to do whatever we can just to make sure it qualifies and it's okay. And
is this a part that you have designed as Parker? Are you design responsible
so it's a Parker
for this?
design. So this is a high pro semi end. So it's just measuring this end of the part. I've checked all the other dimensions, obviously, but this drawing is actually just for this end. So I'm just checking this end at the moment.
Right. Okay. So, and we've got two samples here.
Yeah.
How many were in the batch?
20. So we're doing 10%. Yeah.
Is that normal for a qualification?
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just take me through a couple of the checks that you would be doing at this qualification.
Okay. Then. So I've calibrated the height gauge. Using the slip.
Yeah.
Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to check some of the dimensions off the drawing. So it shows me here 2.45 to 2.55.
And that is a special characteristic, is it?
No, but what this one does is there's a ring that fits in the top, so it's quite critical to the part.
Right.
But it's not an SC
not
dimension, but no, but it is one that we check to make sure it's in.
So just show me then how you go about measuring this.
Okay, so
that's the calibration.
That's the calibration done, which is 20 mil.
Yeah.
And then it tells you there's a point that we can take. So standard 0.1. So this is off the top. And you touch it on twice, gives you a 0.
Yeah.
And then the second. Do that.
So that's 2.482.
Okay,
and what's the spec for that?
The spec is 2.45 to 2.55.
Right, so that's within
so
specification.
We're in spec there.
Okay,
so then
we've got one more for me.
We've got another dimension. So we've got from the top. So again, we're at 0 there anyway. And it comes down to this shoulder.
So that's 18.93.
Yeah. And that is 18.95 plus or minus 0.15. So we're laid down to 18.80.
Yeah, so we're fine on that then.
Yeah.
Okay, and then once you've been through, obviously I don't need to see every single check. Once we've confirmed that they are to drawing, what happens next then?
So once they've been confirmed the drawing, we sign the goods receipt note to say we've inspected it.
Yeah.
And then it will go on to the bus stop and then they go into stock.
Right, okay.
So
and did you say, how does the third delivery get flagged up in your system that it needs to come for inspection?
The GRN says it's an inspection.
Yeah.
And then once we've seen the third inspection, then we release it and it would just go, it will say no inspection, it will say go to stock.
Right, so that would just come straight into the receiving area that we saw earlier then.
Yeah.
Okay, no, that's clear. Thank you.
Okay.
In this video, the auditor is following an audit trail to the qualification process for new parts from supplier. He asks what is the qualification process. The auditee explains that the first 3 deliveries from a supplier are flagged for receiving verification in the laboratory. He explains that 10% of the parts are checked, mainly for the special characteristic dimensions. This answer sounded very vague, and should have been followed up further by the auditor, including what action is taken when a problem is identified in the 10% sample that is taken. It is good practice to ask the auditee to measure some of the products, and the auditee can observe this. The auditee demonstrated how the measurement system is zeroed before making any measurements. Again, the auditor should have questioned further why a characteristic that is not a special characteristic is being measured. This overall situation relates to several IATF 16949 requirements, including 8.3.4.4 product approval process, which states the organization shall establish, implement and maintain a product and manufacturing approval process conforming to requirements defined by customer. The organization shall approve externally provided products and services per ISO 9001 requirement, section 8.4.3, prior to submission to their part approval to the customer. The organization shall obtain documented product approval prior to shipment if required by the customer. Records of such approval shall be retained. The auditor should have questioned who was the customer for the finished product and if there are any specific requirements for product approval, particularly related to supplied parts. If there are no customer-specific requirements, the organization as a minimum needs to have a process meeting ISO 9001 requirement 8.4.3 for the approval of the parts from external providers. IATF 16949 requirement 8.6.4, verification of acceptance of conformity of externally provided products and services, also applies for the ongoing verification of conformity of supplied product. This states, the organization shall have a process to ensure the quality of externally provided processes, products, and services utilizing one or more of the following methods. A. Receipt and evaluation of statistical data provided by the supplier to the organization. B. Receiving inspection and or testing such as sampling based upon performance. C. Second-party or third-party assessments or audits of supplier sites when coupled with records of acceptable delivered product conformance to requirements. D. Part evaluation by a designated laboratory. E. Another method agreed with the customer. The auditor did not clarify that after the initial qualification, what is the ongoing process for verifying that product continues to meet the specified requirements. So let's summarize. When an organization purchases new or modified parts or materials from a supplier, they have to demonstrate an effective process for verifying the parts meet the defined requirements prior to acceptance. The process of qualification needs to take into account customer-specific requirements, which could, for example, be PPAP in accordance with the AIG reference manual. When undertaking any audit, it is good practice to observe actual measurements that are being made, in particular observing the way that the measurement system is set up and the way that the measurements are actually taken. Although sampling of parts for measurements is acceptable, the auditor should have followed up the statistical basis for the number of parts that are selected, and in particular, what action is taken if any part deviations are seen in the sample that has been taken.